Good evening and welcome to the March 23rd Three Village Board of Education meeting. At this time, we'd like to entertain a motion to convene into executive session to discuss employment history of a particular person, collective bargaining negotiations, and security as per open meetings law. May I have a motion? Second? All in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 23rd, 2022 Board of Education meeting. Welcome everyone here and everyone at home. And also we're going to have our superintendent, Mrs. Petishich, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, number 3, changes in the meeting agenda. We are adding 6D, approval of a memorandum of agreement between the Three Village BOE and the TVSAA. Replacement page Schedule A. Between the Three Village BOE and the TVSAA, an employee named in Schedule A. Replacement page Schedule A, Addendum Schedule A1, replacement page Schedule A2, Addendum Schedule A5. And then we're going to go over them individually. Those are just the changes in the agenda. Next, on to number 4 is reports. Our student representative, Riley Meckley, student representative report.
Hello, everyone. Even though my last student report was only 2 weeks ago, Ward Melville has had many new positive things happen in this time. Just this weekend, the varsity science Olympiad team competed at the state finals in Syracuse. Through months of diligence, studying, and hard work, the team placed first overall. Ward Melville has not won states since 2013, and we are very proud of them. During the last 3 days, the robotics team has competed at Hofstra against other schools. They have spent all winter building and programming a robot to carry out certain functions. Today, they made it to the quarterfinals and won the Best School Spirit Award. Looking ahead, student government is hosting a battle of the classes after school in the gym on April 13th. Sophomores, juniors, and seniors get to engage in different activities and compete against each other. We hope this event will foster school spirit and be a fun memory for everyone. This event is a fundraiser, and all the money raised goes to the St. Baldrick's Foundation, which helps childhood cancer. More information on this can be found on the students' grade Google Classrooms. The Tri-M Club is organizing a Ward Melville's Got Talent next Friday on April 1st. Any student had the opportunity to audition to perform their act, and the event is open to all students to come and watch their peers. Our Three Village Industry Advisory Board will be holding their annual career fair next Wednesday. They have over 75 businesses registered to attend and over 300 students signed up from both the middle schools and the high school. The board looks forward to helping students find a possible career. Thank you. That's all I had to report for today.
It is my privilege to introduce our assistant to the superintendent and chief information officer for the school district, Laura Pimentel, who will present to us a data presentation. Laura?
Hi, good evening, Board of Education and Three Village community. Before I begin, I want to be a little upfront and let you know that I'm going to talk about a lot of data and information, and I mean a lot. It's important to remember. Yes, Michael will appreciate it. It's important to remember that the numbers I'm going to talk about are not dollars and cents. Those will be presented later on in Jeff's presentation. These numbers represent the children in our school district. The goal of my presentation is to paint a picture of who we are now compared to who we were 10 years ago, as well as how our students are performing, mostly at the elementary middle school level, so that we can all make the best decisions with our resources going forward. All right, so let's get into it. I'm going to start the presentation with some enrollment and demographic trends that I think are interesting and relevant for us to see who we are as a school district from a few different standpoints and how that has changed over the last 10 years. Here's a look at our student enrollment data over the past 10 years. The state takes a snapshot of the enrollment every fall. As you already know, our enrollment has been declining. However, our unofficial 2021 fall student count shows that our enrollment has increased slightly this school year. When the data are broken down by grade level groupings, you can see that the increase is at the elementary level in grades K through 6. Again, these numbers are unofficial student counts. The data will be officially certified this August and available to the public next fall. These are a few of our student demographic subgroups. The top line shows the percent of students with disabilities, and the bottom line shows the percent of students who are English language learners. Those have remained pretty constant over the last 10 years. The line in the middle is students who are economically disadvantaged. That has increased over the last 10 years. And this slide shows our student race ethnicity. It shows that we have, as a district, become slightly more diverse over the last 10 years. Yep. All of this will be available on the website. It is a lot of information. There's a lot of numbers. So if you do want to dig a little bit deeper, you can. And most of the data that I'm showing you, especially demographic enrollment and then our ASSA report card data, is publicly available on data.niced.gov. I really like presenting this slide. It shows our students' primary languages, and I think it shows another layer of diversity that exists in our district. There are 24 primary languages spoken by our children. 228 students speak a language other than English as their primary language, which represents 4% of our student population. And this is a word cloud that shows those different languages in the district. And I think that it's a beautiful portrayal of the diversity that exists in our district. Okay, now that we've covered that, I'm switching gears to the second part of the presentation to show how we were doing as a district in educating our children. Our state accountability system is critical to improving transparency. As most of you probably already know, in 2015, the Every Student Succeeds Act replaced the No Child Left Behind Act, and our New York State plan was approved in 2018. So the No Child Left Behind Act, it measured districts' annual yearly progress towards proficiency in English, math, science, and it also measured graduation rate. The Every Student Succeeds Act is a much more comprehensive plan. It also measures student achievement and graduation rate, but it also measures indicators such as student growth, the progress of our English language learners, and preparing students for college, career, and civic readiness. So due to concerns about the equity of instruction across the state during the pandemic, the New York State Education Department applied for accountability waivers, which were approved by the federal government for last year. So students were not required to sit for the state assessments last year. District performance on the ESSA indicators from last year were not used for accountability status level or level determinations. And districts' accountability statuses from last year remain the same for this school year. And the data are available for informational purposes on the data.niced.gov website. So one of the ESSA accountability indicators is chronic absenteeism. And what chronic absenteeism means is being absent 10% or more of the days enrolled in school. And the state has a target goal for districts to be under 5%. So just remember, the lower the number, the better. And at the elementary middle school level in our district, we had a 3% chronic absenteeism rate last year. And at the secondary level, that rate was even lower at 1.5%. And again, this information was for informational purposes only this year. Okay, everyone is still with me? All right, I'm almost done. Just kidding. Stay with me a little longer. All right, now we're switching gears to student performance. I'm going to go over it in two ways. First, we're going to look at state assessment data for English, language arts, and mathematics. And then we're going to look at standardized assessment data from AimsWeb and iReady, which we use in district to screen students 3 times a year. Starting with the New York State assessment data. It is a federal requirement that we have 95% of our students tested This is nationwide. All districts should have 95% of their students tested in the state testing program. These are our testing percentages over the last 3 years. In 2019-20, the tests were not offered. As you can tell, we were nowhere near close to that 95% requirement. And this is mostly due to parents opting their children out of the state assessments. So as you can see, over the last 3 years, it increased slightly. And when you look at it, the breakdown by grade level, you can see that more students are testing at the lower grade levels than at the middle school or junior high level. Yes. It affects our ESSER scores, our accountability scores. And I presented, I don't remember the really long presentation 2 years ago with all the data, but the students are counted in the denominator in our measure, in our indicator, but not in the numerator because they didn't test. So if you go on to data.niced.gov and you look at our data from 2 years ago when we actually had it calculated, our elementary schools are all level 1 out of 4, and that's because our students didn't test. So they counted as students in our schools, but they essentially counted as if they got a level 1 on the test because they weren't counted at all in the numerator. 1 is bad. So they calculate it in multiple ways. They do calculate it one time with all the kids included, and then they calculate it a second time with just those kids who tested. And when you look at that, we were a level 4. But when it's included with every student in the school, the expectation is that every student will test.
Again with that. So, you're right, Christine. Does that metric get baked into any of the district rankings that you know of?
For sure, yeah. And I don't know offhand which
Right.
ones specifically, but it is the only state assessment measure at the elementary and junior high level that's available for the public.
Okay.
So
Interesting. Thank you.
it's very limited.
Yep, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No. So the opt-out movement is not a statewide movement. It is mostly Long Island, specifically Suffolk County. And 2 years ago, I did present the numbers of what those opt-outs looked like. But if you go on to data.niced.gov and you click around to different school districts, all of that data is available, and you could see the participation rate by district.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Okay. So we are not meeting that line. So before I present the data, I want to point out that NICED has a data disclaimer on their website for this school year only. They don't ever have a data disclaimer about the opt-outs. So that's something that you would just need to know when you're looking at the data. But this year they did have one. So since students were not required to sit for exams, the data are not representative of the state population nor each school district's population. And the data from this test administration should not be compared from district to district or school to school or to another school year for this specific test administration. So this is our data for those students who tested, again, for informational purposes only. The different colors represent the different levels. So a level 1 is below proficient for standards in that grade level. A level 2 is partially proficient. Level 3, which is shown in the green, is proficient in the standards, and blue represents excelling in standards and considered more than sufficient for grade level expectations at that grade level. So that's the English language arts 3 through 8, and then this is our math data. And I did want to point out the bottom 2 rows, that's 7th and 8th grade. A lot of our students are already in Algebra 1, especially in 8th grade. So the opt-out or the participation rate is low, but they're also replacing the state exam with the Algebra 1 Regents exam. So that's another reason why that one's lower. Okay. So before I go into the second part of the performance, part of the presentation, which is performance, I wanted to briefly explain how we use these assessments in the district, which is our RTI MTSS program. The data that I'm about to show you is not publicly available. This is data that we use internally. If you have children in grades kindergarten through 8th grade, you're probably familiar with some of these assessments that I'm going to be talking about because your children take them and you see their scores 3 times a year. So what do these acronyms mean, RTI and MTSS? All students receive research-based core instruction. We screen all students 3 times a year to identify those who are falling below standards and provide intervention services to close educational gaps. An instructional support team meets weekly to discuss students who need additional support. They review data to identify if a student is making adequate progress. If necessary, the team will recommend a change of tier and/or intervention to close the learning gap. And parents are notified when a student requires an intervention that is beyond what's provided in the general education classroom. And this is the triangle visual that everyone is familiar with in district. This represents the different tiers of intervention. The bottom represents all of our students who get the research-based core instruction. And typically 80 to 90% of students remain at that tier throughout the year. The next tier is targeted intervention. This is some students with some risk factors. This is when students are starting to struggle. They begin to get intervention services. This is approximately 10 to 15%. And then the top tier is the most intensive intervention, students at high risk, and that should be less than 5% of the student population. And although there are many levels of data analysis that occur, the top being the state accountability system, which is the furthest removed from the child, all the way down to that classroom teacher and the instructional support team or committee on special education, which is the closest to the child. The bottom two rows are the most critical because the data are more timely and has the greatest impact on students. Okay, so in district, we use the Ames Web Plus assessment to universally screen all of our students in kindergarten through 8th grade and to evaluate students' literacy skills. And then we use the iReady assessment, which is a diagnostic assessment, to identify student progress towards math standards in grades kindergarten through 6th grade. And both of those are standardized measures that are used nationwide. This is an example of the parent report. If you are a parent of students in grades kindergarten through 8, you've probably seen it. If you haven't, you should get a parent portal account and go check it out. This is where we post the data for the students 3 times a year. So they get it in the fall, the winter, and then the spring. Okay, so we're going to start with the early literacy data, kindergarten and 1st grade. I pulled the charts right from the Ames Web Plus platform. And for each grade level, we're going to look at student performance on the fall administration over the last 3 years. And I chose the fall administration because we had consistent data without gaps in testing. And the fall administration can show us the instructional needs at the start of each of the school years. So we're going to look at each of these columns that are grouped together. We're going to look at the fall with pre-pandemic. We're going to look at the fall right after we had to switch to virtual instruction spring of 2020. And then we're going to look at the fall for the current year. There's a lot of numbers on there if you want to see all of those afterwards. It does show the count and the percent at each level on the bottom. So let's zoom in real quick just to the first 2 groups of bars because I want you to understand what you're looking at when you see these 2 bars. The one on the left represents 3 Village. That's the darker bar. And the one on the right represents the national norm data. And this assessment was normed prior to COVID. So we're comparing our district to pre-COVID norms. And each of the colors represents the different percentile range. So the yellow is the 11th through 25th. The green is the 26th through 74th. And then the blue at the top is the 75th to 89th percentile. And then the dotted line is the median or the middle child. So 50% of the students scored higher than the median, 50% of the students scored lower. And may sound a little bit confusing. All you really need to know when you're looking at these 2 bars is if the district is even, if our bar is even with the national norm, then we're doing just as well as the nation. If our bar is slightly higher, we're doing better. If it's slightly lower, we're doing not as good as the nation.
Why are they different heights?
To show what our distribution of student scores looks like compared to the national distribution. So some observations you can make about the chart right here. This is kindergarten, again, fall of each of those school years. Right. One observation you can make is that our median line, our middle child, is scoring slightly lower than the national norm when they enter kindergarten. And our distribution as a whole is slightly lower than the national norm distribution. When you move on to 1st grade, you can see that our median is still slightly below the national norm, but in the fall of this current school year, our bar started to go higher than the national norm's bar. So our distribution of students started to go a little bit higher in the fall of this current year for 1st grade. Okay, so now we're going to move on to 2nd through 8th grade, which is our reading assessment. So that was early literacy. This is reading. For 2nd grade, you can see that our middle child is now above the national norm, and all of our bars are starting to creep even higher above the national norm. And this continues in each grade level. This is second. This is third. Much bigger jump in fourth, fifth, and then sixth grade. So by the time our students are in sixth grade, this current fall administration, they were about in between, the middle child was in between the 75th to the 89th percentile in sixth grade. And that continued into seventh grade and eighth grade. So these numbers are pretty exceptional and reflect the strong foundation that supports early learning for future success in high school. Another way that we like to look at it are triangles. This shows the tiers again. So this is looking in the RTI mindset. And what we've noticed is that the greatest need in our district is at the kindergarten first and second grade level, where we have the most support needed for our students. But by the time they get into seventh and eighth grade, we have 95% of our students in tier 1, which is in the average range. So in district, we broke this down even further for kindergarten first and second because we were just curious to see how the students were doing prior to COVID, during the pandemic, and then now. So that's what you're going to see. This is 2018-19 for kindergarten, 19-20, 2021, and then the current year, 21-22. And that's the fall, winter, and spring administration of each one. And what we found is our students are still slightly behind the where we were pre-COVID in kindergarten and first grade. Not much, but definitely slightly behind. And then second grade, they started to catch up. And actually, this year's fall and winter is looking better than we were looking pre-COVID. And to help close those gaps, the district offered a second support service for students before and after school so that they can get double the support both in school and out of school to help close those gaps. Okay, now we're going to transition to the math benchmark assessments. We're going to look separately at the performance of each grade level in Three Village compared to the nation and the state. So our district's fall 2021 score distribution is on the left side. And on the right side, you'll see two bars, the nation and New York State this fall. So we're comparing the same test administration. The different colors represent students' relative placement levels. So iReady is a different test than AimsWeb. It measures what grade level they're performing at relative to their current grade level. So the pink represents 2 grade levels below. The yellow represents 1 grade level below, which is where we expect students to be at the start of the school year because they haven't yet learned the grade level content. The green represents early or on grade level, and the dark green represents mid to above grade level. So on the right, I want to point out a trend that you'll see happening at the state and national level. You'll notice that as I progress through the slides, and as the grades increase, the percent of students in the pink and dark pink levels in the future slides begin to grow. And this is happening because math skills are cumulative and build upon previously mastered skills. If students have not formed strong math skills, it becomes much more challenging to master new content. As students progress through the grade levels, the math curriculum builds upon these foundational skills, and they are critical for future success. So you'll also notice that the percent of students in Three Village who are starting out the school 1 or 2 grade levels below remains small and fairly constant across all of the grade levels. Also, our green and dark green levels increase with each grade level more significantly than at the state and the national level. So I'm going to click through each one slowly and then show you them all at once. So this is second grade. This is, again, fall, the start of the school year. Third grade. You can see on the right they're starting to climb even more. Grade 4, grade 5, and then grade 6. We don't have this data broken down. I've actually asked for it. This is the first time they've given us state data, which I was excited to have. They usually just give us national norm data. No, they don't break it down. The state test, we can do that, but not with this kind of assessment. So as you can see, side-by-side comparison, our greens get larger as each grade level increases. Our current 6th graders entered school this year with 54% of the students performing on or above grade level. Okay, so this is the last part of the presentation, which shows data for the secondary level. Unfortunately, the data is still under embargo for a few of these. And as soon as it gets released to the public, I will update the slides so that you can see. Last year, only 4 Regents exams were administered in June, and students were not required to sit for the test. If they did sit for the test, it was at no harm to them. They do not have to have those grades posted to their transcripts they don't want. They could have opted to get the E, to get the exemption. So the state is still trying to figure out how they're going to display all of these scores to the public. Advanced placement exams are also still under the embargo and not released yet, but I thought it was interesting to show 2020's advanced placement exam scores. So this is the number of students who participate in AP courses by department and then by course, and this was in 2020. And of those students who participated in the course, only 58% of those students tested and took the AP test. It is not required to sit for the AP test in Three Village if you're in the AP course. Some districts require it, but our district does not. So 58% of the students tested, and of those students tested, 86% were proficient. And I did a heat map just so you can see where those proficiencies fell.
And some districts require you to take the test if you took the class, right?
That's for the niche ratings. That's part of, so that they, on the surveys, when they
Right.
publish them, and they're always number 1 or number 2.
So that's a metric that gets baked into district rankings.
Absolutely. We don't do that.
Yeah. Okay, so the mean SAT scores we did slightly better than pre-COVID. In the state, we're pretty consistent. The state did slightly worse on average, but still pretty consistent. That was math, and then this is critical reading again, pretty consistent. Graduation rate. The state looks at graduation rate 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years. So they use the grade, it's called the grade 9 cohort. So when you enter 9th grade, you enter a cohort, and they look at districts and how many students graduated within the 4 years with their cohort. And they do 4 years through August. They give kids that extra summer, a few months, and then that helps our graduation rate when we look at the 4 year. And then 5 year, and then 6 year. So I zoomed out a little bit so you can see some pre-COVID graduation rates and the last 2 years. It's pretty consistent. It did dip slightly, but it's pretty consistent with pre-COVID data. And then when you zoom in to look at the diploma types, we had 75% of students receive an advanced Regents diploma, and 23% of students receive a Regents diploma. And then if you zoom out a few years, we actually did better. We have more students receiving an advanced Regents diploma this year and last year, which is something to celebrate. And then this is where our graduates went after they left us. 76% attended a 4-year college, and 16% attended a 2-year college. Military, it says 0%, but there are a few students that just rounded down. And then 4% were seeking employment, and 4% are undecided. So to summarize all of the information you have heard tonight, on many different measures, our students are performing as well as or better than pre-pandemic numbers. However, gaps in learning do exist, and I believe they will become even more clear when the New York State testing system returns to normal. So as a school district, we will continue to do what we do best, which is to monitor individual student learning and make adjustments to instruction and supports so that each child can reach their fullest potential. So thank you and for your time and attention tonight.
Does anybody on the board have any questions?
I have a comment. That was excellent. That was a really, really good presentation. And
Thank you.
It's especially timely now as you start off with, because it helps us think about. I can see how important it is to allocate support resources, especially in math and especially at the elementary level. So that's helpful. And they say that mastery of a subject is expressed in your ability to explain it to laymen or something. So in that sense, you know your stuff, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're a great teacher.
Thank you.
I did have one question,
Yeah, sure.
just anecdotally. With those early numbers that were read, are you seeing anything trending in a more positive direction with the introduction of pre-K in the buildings?
Which numbers? So that
Like with
The
the
kindergarten.
kindergartners and first graders where there were deficits? Is
It's
having-
really hard to measure exactly what is causing
Yeah.
our students to be, because our kids do come in from multiple
Right.
pre-Ks, and we do only have a half-day pre-K program. So some students only participate for the half-day, whereas others stay for that extended enrichment. One thing we've thought about that could be affecting our numbers is our December 1st cutoff for birthdays. The rest of many states in the nation and districts have a September cutoff. And when you're that young, those months do matter, especially when you're looking at national norm data. So that could be one of the reasons why our numbers are coming in slightly below.
Well, it was excellent again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, next report. C is our budget presentation, which will be given by Assistant Superintendent Jeff Carlson. And if we can just. Sorry, Assistant Deputy Superintendent. I'm sorry, Jeff. He's going, if the audience can just not ask any questions, let him go through his presentation, we would very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So the budget vote this year is May 17th. It's always the third Tuesday of May. We have discussed the budget briefly at our last meeting, March 9th. We have tonight, and then at the next meeting, April 13th, is the night the board adopts the budget. The next day, we transmit the property tax report card to the State Education Department. May 4th is our budget hearing, where we go over the budget, and then, of course, May 17th is the vote itself. Tonight, just the things that I would like to speak about a little bit, the tax cap, our state aid as it stands right now, changes to staffing as we're proposing, and also, I believe, is the Budget Advisory Committee going to make a report tonight? Yes, okay, so the Budget Advisory Committee will be making a report. We've had several meetings with them, including last night, which was a meeting with the Budget Advisory Committee and the entire Board of Education. So some of you may have watched that at home. So the tax cap, as I've said in all the years that it's been in place, it's not automatically a 2% tax cap, although a lot of people refer to it as that. There are different factors that determine what it is. It varies from year to year and from district to district. However, this year, our cap happens to come out to right at 2%. The budget that we're, as it stands right now, the budget that we've put together would carry a tax increase of 1.94%. There was a little confusion last night on my part when I said 1.94%, and there was a question about was it 1.91. The budget-to-budget increase in the budget, the draft of the budget where we're at, is 1.91. The tax levy increase is at 1.94%. So I apologize for the confusion on that last night for that.
Yeah, sorry. Does that mean that where does that come from? Is it because our percentage of state aid did not increase at the same rate?
Well,
Where does that
yeah,
come
so,
from, that differential?
even if the budget and the tax levy increase the same dollar amount, let's say they increased exactly the same dollar amount, the percentage increase on the tax levy would be higher than on the budget, because the budget is all of our expenditures. The tax levy is the budget minus state aid and other revenues. So the tax levy is always going to be a lower, the total tax levy is always going to be lower than the total budget. So if they had the same exact dollar amount of an increase, the percentage increase on the lower number is higher, meaning the percentage increase on the tax levy. In this case, and sometimes the one is higher than the other, and a lot of that has to do with state aid. When state aid is increasing, then it helps the tax levy percent increase be a little bit lower. So in this case, they come out to very close, but a little different. And it has to do with state aid as well.
Okay, thank you.
It would be unusual for them to be exactly the same. And if they did, it would be a pure coincidence.
Okay.
So the state aid, where we're at right now in the governor's budget proposal, would have us getting an increase of $1,584,000 and change. It comes out to a little over 3.3%. As I had mentioned previously, it's a little bit more than actually I was thinking that we would get, and that's a result of the way the governor is proposing the state aid increase is mostly to foundation aid, which generally favors the lower wealth school districts. However, there was a baseline increase in that category of aid, foundation aid. Everybody gets at least a 3% increase. So a lot of what our increase is related to that everybody gets at least a 3% increase. So that's where that comes from. The state budget is due by April 1st, so hopefully by the next time we meet, we will have our final state aid number. If not, we'll go with this number, which, you know, has been the case many times in the past where the state budget has not been completed at the time when the budget has to be adopted by the board. If the state budget is finished, maybe we'll get an increase from that. I don't know. In years past, the governor's proposal has always been the baseline for the state aid amount, and it's gone up from there. The state Senate and the state Assembly always want to have a piece in getting more. This is a different governor. I don't know if it will be the same this year. We just don't know. Hopefully it'll go up, but we don't know that yet. Hopefully by the night the board adopts the budget, we will know that. If that's the case, then it will be incorporated into the budget. So now the staffing changes.
And that would lower the levy number, right?
That would lower, I'm sorry, yes, that would,
okay.
well, it could lower the levy number, yeah.
Okay, if
Yeah.
they increase that.
It could.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now we're up to staffing changes, and for that, Mrs. Pettisich will cover.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. So as Ms. Pimentel pointed out in her presentation, our elementary enrollment is going up slightly. And if we compare numbers from this year to last year at this exact time, there are 89 more children in our elementary school than there was last year. So we are projecting that there will be an additional section needed. We always also put a position in contingency in the event that we need additional support at the elementary level. Kindergarten enrollment is sometimes very difficult to project, as is our ENL population, which can be very transient. Most of our staffing changes would be a decrease. And that is happening at the secondary level, as you can see on the chart. All of this was reviewed with our leadership at the secondary level, and these are the areas: English 2.9, Math 0.7, Science 2.0, Global Language 1.0, ENL 0.1, Social Studies 0.6, and Music 0.3. These positions are not needed as a result of consolidating classes and slightly lower enrollment. I do want to point out in all of these staffing changes, this is not going to negatively impact student electives in any way. And in fact, at the junior high school level, we are restoring our writing centers and our math centers, which will be offered during the lunch periods for students in grades 7, 8, and 9. So that is going back to pre-COVID. The other changes include some administrative changes, which has to do with our instructional or technology department. We are not replacing a position there. And those positions, those responsibilities have been consolidated with the existing staff. And we are abolishing the Director of Elementary Curriculum position, and we are consolidating those responsibilities as well. The pre-kindergarten program will be assigned to one of our assistant principals, and the SAC program will be with Erin Connolly, who is our Executive Director of Student and Community Services. The Social Studies Director stipend will also be removed. We have a coordinating chair of social studies that works with Ward Melville, Julinas, and Murphy Junior High Schools, and we have a lead in each one of the junior high schools to help support those efforts as well. We are eliminating 4.5 of our nursing staff. We had increased our nursing staff for the past 2 years due to COVID because of the lower infection rates and as a result of different COVID responsibilities that are necessary and the in terms of what the mandates are. We don't need to have that level of nursing staff at this point. Of course, if things were to change, we would reevaluate that decision, certainly, because the health and safety of our students and staff and school community is a priority and will remain such.
Other than these staffing changes, we're not recommending any additional programs or services or any large items be added to next year's budget, except for one thing, and that's the repayment to our reserves that we use because of, to keep schools open last year for COVID. That's going to be $400,000. There's a line item for that. That's going to be the minimum that we have to repay each year until the full $2 million is paid back. So that's really well, some of the other changes that we made within the budget codes. The Budget Advisory Committee will talk about some of their recommendations. Some of their recommendations have already been incorporated into here. We agreed on some of those things already. We also went through some of the budget codes, reduced some that we felt could safely be reduced without impacting anyone. So that's been done also. We're going to keep all the voting at Wood Mobile High School. It worked very well last year for the second budget vote. It eliminates a lot of confusion. We always have confusion from some people who are not sure where to vote. As we know, the percentage of eligible voters that vote in a school budget is generally very low, and sometimes it's only occasionally people vote, so they don't always know where to vote. We feel this will make it a lot easier for people, just one location for everybody. And from a security standpoint, it works out great. So it will all be at the Wood Melville High School in the gym, Tuesday, May 17th, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. So after tonight, we'll have the Budget Advisory Committee's report. Then we will continue to review with all of our principals and directors to make sure anything that they feel we're going to need in next year's budget is incorporated if we can. And we will, at the next meeting, present all our findings and recommendations to the Board of Education. So that's it for tonight as far as my presentation, unless there are questions from the board.
Will it surprise you to learn I have a question?
No, we'll not.
Okay. So I'm thinking about Laura's presentation, and I see that we've budgeted for a contingent position at elementary. If we found by September, October, at some point, that enrollment did not call for the need of an additional section, might we be able to use some of that to provide additional math support at the elementary level?
We could certainly do that. That doesn't appear to be the trend that would be happening, but I just want to be clear. In addition to this one position, we always have a position in contingency at the elementary level. Our staff and teacher assignments generally don't go out until the end of August, and the reason we hold on that is because kindergarten enrollment is so difficult to project, as is the ENL population. So we want to make sure, particularly as Laura's pointed out, at the very lower grades, that we maintain an optimal class size with our students at that level. So.
Anybody else?
So regarding class size for elementary, we're relatively low than average. So does this increase of personnel help with that, or it's not?
It will maintain it.
Okay.
Good. Okay, 4D, we're going to have the Budget Advisory Committee report that will be represented by Sue Wallert. Go over there.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sue Wallert, and I am proud to be part of the Budget Advisory Committee. We've worked pretty hard. Good evening to Cheryl Pedicic and board members. I've been seeing a lot of you lately. So yesterday evening at our budget work session, the Budget Advisory Committee met with school administrators and the Board of Education to discuss the analysis we have been working on for the past 3 months. Our approach has been to analyze historical budgets and budget transfers, class size reports, staffing reports, revenue reports, state and federal funding reports, budgets from neighboring schools, school funding transparency data, and any other data we could get our hands on. It's quite a bit of data out there. Many hours were spent analyzing these reports and becoming acquainted with the data. The administration has been cooperative with all of our requests. Though the challenges of mapping data pulled from different software platforms did cause delays in getting clean data and a great deal of time to clean the data for analysis. The analysis we presented included, number 1, comparisons of cost per pupil spending for 23 plus districts on Long Island. Three Village ranked number 2 in overall cost per pupil and number 1 for the portion of spending identified as central costs. We presented the types of central costs which were highest when compared to other districts. This included district academic costs and general support costs. The ideas were floated by administration as to why these central costs are higher than all the other districts in our analysis. This was left as an open item, and we will be asking the administration to provide a response. Number 2, another type of analysis the Budget Advisory Committee has been running specifically identifies those line items which had been overfunded year nearly every year, overfunded every year. We noticed that the administration did actually reduce many of these overfunded line items in the new budget, and explanations were provided for some of the ones where the new budget was not adjusted down. However, there still remained many line items which continue to be overfunded in the new budget. One example is travel conferences, where the past 5 years of budgets reflect that we have never used more than 63% of the 100,000 budgeted. Number 3. Next, we highlighted specific departments which had budget increases between 6% and 40%, including safety and security, BOCES transportation, and several others. Explanations were provided for some of these, and we will be requesting responses for the others which were not addressed. Number 4. The last portion of the analysis highlighted specific line items which saw either large dollar increases or large percentage increases, such as separation pay, administrative longevity or administration longevity, and others. A list of line items will be sent to administration for further explanation. It's quite a bit of work. We advise that additional detail be considered when presenting future budgets. Our budget has around 450 line items, while other area school districts provide a more granular view by presenting additional detailed line item budget codes. Several area districts have as many as 1,200 budget line items. This will actually help stakeholders better understand where funding is going and how much is actually being spent. We also made a recommendation that more granular budget coding at the building level be applied to the central costs where appropriate, and that items in the budget which saw large increases or decreases be identified and tagged with explanations. Many of the items we flagged were explained adequately, which could have been preempted if explanations were provided in advance. We expect the administration will provide this color in their presentation of the budget to the community. The Budget Advisory Committee has heavily leaned on objective data and analysis throughout the process. We meet several times a week and have dedicated hours upon hours of our time to provide useful guidance to the Board of Education and the administration. We don't always agree, though we work together with a unified goal of better understanding of the budget and providing guidance based on our analysis. We are also tasked with communicating our findings to you, the community. You can follow our updates on our public Facebook page at 3 VBAC. And finally, we are continuing to review the proposed budget and will be forwarding any suggestions for further review to the board and the administration prior to the budget being finalized. We also recommend that the Budget Advisory Committee become a permanent feature of the budget process and the BAC start their work earlier in the school year. I just want to say thank you to both the board and the administration for basically allowing us to be part of this journey. It's taken a lot of work, and there's a lot of people that have worked hard, and I know many of you thanked us last night, so I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you very much for listening.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Will the recording of yesterday's workshop be available to public?
Yes, all recordings and minutes will be posted to the website.
Perfect.
Is that it?
They already posted already.
Oh. Okay, great. Moving on, number 5, items for board discussion. I'm going to turn this over to Vice President Sue Rosenzweig. She's going to give us some happy news, we call it.
Good news, yeah. So, thank you, and thank you, Riley. You made my job really easy this time around. You covered a lot, so thank you.
Cross everything off. No.
That's right. I'm like, okay, now I don't get to do that one now. You more likely heard by now the wonderful news that Ward Melville High School senior Amber Loa has taken 3rd place in the prestigious Regeneron Science Talent Search. That is a national competition. This is an incredible honor, and we're very proud of Amber and very proud of her in-star teachers, Dr. Marnie Kula, James Dornicek, Todd Kettler, Jennifer Corletto, and Jennifer Saragano. And I apologize, Ms. Saragano, because I butchered your name last time, so I hope I just made up for it. In addition to those we announced at our last meeting, we've learned that several more of our amazingly talented students had their work selected for inclusion in the Atelier at Flowerfield Art Show this month. So congratulations to Agata R. Kipkina, Maria Gavrilo, and Caitlin Carrington. Hats off as well to their teachers Mike Sacco and Jim Swarovski. So that's our good news. Congratulations, everyone.
So this isn't a item for board discussion. I just wanted to say that our junior high schools this week, actually, Murphy started tonight and Jelena starts tomorrow with Matilda and Little Shop of Horrors. They are amazing shows, and they are great for all ages. All ages, $15 a ticket. And they just do a fantastic job, and I'm so excited, as well as many of the board members and administration will be going to see these fantastic shows. So, back to business. Number 6, items for board action. A, notice of public hearing, budget vote, and election. Inger?
Okay, that's the notice that gets posted 4 times in a public paper prior to the vote with the information on the budget, the amount, where to vote, and deadlines.
Thank you. Can I please have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Motion passes. Okay, number B, approval of the 22-23 Board of Education organizational meeting. Inger?
Because we have our organizational meeting on a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday, by educational law, we have to have a resolution and vote on it to change the date.
Okay. Thank you. Can I please have a motion? Second.
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Opposed, abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, number 6C, approval of stipulation of settlement and general release agenda item. Okay. Can I please have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Confidential information, no questions or discussions. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions? Motion passes. Okay. So now we're going to move on to number 7, consent agenda.
I'm sorry, Ms. Pavlenka, do you have 6D there?
Yeah, 16.
No. Oh.
Yeah.
6D, approval of memorandum of agreement between the Three Village BOE and the TVSAA, an employee named in Schedule A. Do I have a motion? Second. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed or abstentions? Motion passes. Do you want to? Not now. Okay.
This is just a resolution.
Okay. Do I have to do these? Do these now? We have to vote on that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so next we're gonna vote on the other changes in the agenda. Replacement page, Schedule A. Can I have a motion?
You don't vote on those. Those are just replacement pages. They get voted on instructional and non-instructional, right?
Oh, you're moving those, okay.
Is that's correct, Gary?
That is correct. Ms. Pavlenka mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting, that they were replacement pages.
Right.
So you don't have to read those over.
Okay, terrific. Okay, 7, consent agenda. So we are I need a first and a second motion for number 7, consent agenda, and we will vote when it's all over. First, please? Second, okay. Any questions or discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, motion passes. So we're going to start off with B, declaration of surplus equipment. Jeff?
We have 2 items, 2 televisions that, from Setauket Elementary School that are no longer in operable condition.
Any questions from the board? Letter C, Claims Auditor's Report, November 21 through January 22. Jeff?
Would you like to include all the monthly financial reports? That's items C through H. These are the monthly financial reports for November, December, January that were reviewed by the Audit Committee.
Sure. No, we don't do that yet. So we're going on to number I, letter I. He wants out the door. So we're on letter I, Jeff?
These are health and welfare services for Three Village resident students that attend private schools located in other districts.
Any questions from the board on I? No. J, approval of addendum to contract with outside service provider for special ed services.
This is to add a service to an existing service provider's contract.
Any questions from the board? K, affiliation agreement with St. John's University. Kevin?
We continue to form relationships with more colleges and universities throughout the country and our region for student teachers and affiliation agreements.
Any questions? L, curriculum writing projects 21-22 edition.
Yes, since last summer, we started a program for students going into 1st grade into 6th grade in mathematics. This was a project to allow us to do an intermediate project and a primary project for this coming summer for both of those levels.
Any questions from the board? Recommendations on Committee on Special Ed, recommendations, that's M and N, recommendations of Committee on Preschool Special Ed meetings. Letter O, approval of memorandum of agreement between the Three Village Central School District and UPSEU Maintenance and Operations Unit.
Yes, this is the agreement to the settlement to the maintenance and operations contract that you were here to vote on.
Any questions? Letter P, Personnel Matters Instructional.
Yes, there are several things on tonight's instructional piece. First, we have several instructional resignations. We have an extended leave of absence, sub-teachers. We have 6 junior high school and high school coaches, 4 extracurricular athletics supervisors, 2 co-curricular supervisors, additional leads, and a variety of supervising activities such as Science Olympiad, Senior Trip, Scalia chaperones, and mess track courses. In addition, sadly, we have the retirement of our beloved principal of Mount, Roseanne DeBella. She has put in for her retirement. So, Roseanne, congratulations. And we are also fortunate enough to now announce Roseanne's replacement, Marilyn Heydrich, who has been her assistant principal for 7 years. Congratulations.
Any questions from the board? Q, personnel matters, non-instructional. Gary?
Certainly. Non-instructional, we have several non-instructional resignations. We replaced a few SEAs, 2 additional non-instructional substitute hires, and the big item for this one was 27 election workers for the budget vote.
Any questions from the board? Okay, now, all in favor of the consent agenda? Okay, everybody up? Okay. Any questions, any discussion, abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Okay, real quick before we go to the last segment of public participation, the next board meeting will be April 13th. Is it here?
Yes.
Okay. The next policy meeting will be April 7th at 6 p.m. The next Budget Advisory Committee meeting will be April 5th at 6 p.m. Okay, so before we begin, we have a few of the public participations. I'm going to make a statement, okay? So, we have up to 30 minutes. You've already completed your blue forms, which is correct. Thank you very much. It is the collective expectation of the Board of Education and district administration that appropriate decorum will be respected and followed at all times. Under state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments, questions, or discussion of any individual, district personnel, or students. Inappropriate language, shouting, behavior that is disruptive and disrespectful will not be tolerated, and the individual demonstrating this behavior will be ruled out of order and asked to leave. So, we do have a 30-minute public participation, and it will begin now. I just want to say I just want you to understand the rules. I don't want to have to stop anybody, especially a young person, so I just want to make that clear up front. The best bet for anybody that wants to speak about a personnel issue or a teacher or a coach or whatever it may be in our district, because you cannot do it here, the best thing for you to do is to write the Board of Ed an email. Write us an email. We have received, we have read. That is the best way. We can't, just for the same reasons that when we have these personnel discussions in executive session that are confidential, and we can't tell the community and the public about things that sometimes we'd like to tell because people think that the wrong things. I'm not talking about this situation just in general, but we can't say a word. We can't speak about it. It's the same thing, and it is our policy. It's an actual policy of the district. So I don't want to have to cut anybody off. If you still want to speak, that's fine. Of course, you are free to and welcome to. But please also consider writing us an email, and our email address is on the website, or our district clerk can give it to you, okay? So I'll call your name if you'd like to speak, please do. But again, nothing about personnel, staff, or any students. Jackie Rayling.
Hi. So I'm just here to talk about the positive experience.
Just state your name, please, for the.
Jackie Railing. The positive experience that my daughter had on, am I allowed to say a team?
You can't even talk about your daughter. It's a student, I know.
Can it
That's
be
why
noted here that there are people here in support of?
We see and we know, and that's why we're urging you all to write an email to us, okay? And you can phone call us as well. You can contact the superintendent, call her directly. You can contact Kevin Finnerty, who's the director of athletics. But unfortunately, if we allow you to break policy, I have to allow everyone. And that's not always a good thing.
I just want you to understand why there's this amount of people
We
here.
absolutely know.
Okay.
We read your emails, so
Okay.
we know, just by looking at you and your basketball sweatshirts. We got it. We got it. Beth Edson?
State my name, Beth Edson. Realize my conflict of interest here, but good evening to the board members and administrators. I realize this has probably been a difficult year for you with COVID, and so thank you for all your service and your time. And to Mr. Mano for schooling me in the Board of Ed rules today. I appreciate the phone calls and answering all my questions. And on a side note, the data presentation was amazing. I'm an early education teacher. Lower the entrance rate to September 1st and support early ed. But aside from that, I just wanted to realize I can't say much, but I just want you to know that it is on your shoulders, that if you are to hire someone to coach, support, or be in charge of young children, that it should be someone who has the resume, the credentials, the amazing support from children, parents, people decades ago, that person should have the same, if not better, resume than the person that they are replacing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Catherine Edson?
My name is Catherine Edson. I understand that I can't really say much. I had a whole thing written, but it goes against policy.
Email it. We read
So I'm
your
not
email.
gonna say
We
it.
read your email.
So I have a note here from a former player who didn't
No
go
names.
didn't go to Ward Melville.
Yes, just no names.
I'm gonna read this. Katie, it's so weird that life comes full circle sometimes. I loved high school sports, and it is largely due to my experience as a player that I chose this career path. She's a phys ed teacher now. Having the opportunity to hopefully influence you, even half as much as your dad influenced me as a player, is going to be one of the greatest and most rewarding challenges I will have as a coach. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Catherine. Julia Greek.
My name is Julia Greek. I will email what I wrote, but as far as experiences playing for Ward Melville, I've been on the team since 8th grade, and Ward Melville's always made sure that we have the best of the best, and when that is brought to a sports team, you can see it excel, and that's what's been happening for girls basketball. And I think it's been put to the side a little bit, in my opinion, just being on the team for a numerous amount of years. And I think that Ward Melville basketball is finally excelling to the point where hopefully we could win league, possibly counties. The only teams we've lost to are teams that are genuinely just better skilled, and it has honestly nothing to do with their coaches. It has to do with their players. But for us, it's a different case, and I think the coach plus the players is the glue, and that's what was happening this year and the past 2 years with girls basketball. And I hope you can take note of that as you make your decision. And I respect everyone's decision and opinions, but I can't speak for all of us, but we definitely have our positive opinions on situations that come up, and I think it just should be heard, because Ward Melville is all about experiences and sharing positive things. Everyone knows Ward Melville as a positive place, especially for sports. We're very known for that, and I think it should just be brought up and brought to a lot of people's attention. And thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, any questions from the Board of Ed about anything? No, you ready to go home? Move for adjournment. Can I have a first?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Good night, and thank you very much.